It's the Sports Peninsula podcast coming up. We're looking back at a record-breaking NFL draft weekend from right here in Detroit, Michigan, as over 775,000 people attended the festivities to witness yet another great draft weekend. We're looking back at the Detroit Lions 2024 draft. Brad Holmes and his staff were very active and traded up on several occasions in an effort to get their guy. We'll look at the picks and give our analysis and grades next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Brzezinski Drew, and it is Sunday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, and we're talking Detroit Lions draft review. We're going to talk about the picks, talk about the trades, many trades that Brad Holmes pulled off, and in our general analysis of the picks. And with me to do that, as always, is Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners. Coach, how you doing?
Drew, doing well. Yes, happy Cinco de Mayo to everybody and all the viewers out there. It is a major holiday, one of the biggest ones, and our neighbors in the South. So happy Cinco de Mayo. It was an electric atmosphere. We had the opportunity. We had talked about going down, and we did. And it took in the draft experience day 2 and day 3. Really, we really just kind of walked around and did a lot of people watching and couldn't quite get in towards the theater on Friday. Mm-hmm. Had we waited, we would have, but it got a little bit later into the evening, and we decided to make make our way back to where we were staying that night. But then we took the whole experience and we went to the corner ballpark, in Corktown, old Tiger Stadium site, and got to meet Damar Hamlin, and do some really neat things over there, and really take in that site, because I have not been over there, and since it was Tiger Stadium. So. Wow. In regards to being inside. So that was really kind of neat. Marked off kind of where Larry Herndon may have caught the 1984 ball, and it was kind of neat. Then we made our way back over into the Hart Plaza area and got ourselves in towards the staging area and really took in the draft. So it was, real unique experience. And kudos to everybody involved, because this was a marvelous event. It was an absolute marvelous event. And the scale and size, you had to be there to see it, to really, really understand the scope and sequence of what was done and what was accomplished. So everybody whose hands were involved in the 2024 draft here in Detroit, to you, absolute applause, tip of the hat. You guys, made it happen, and it was wonderful. And it sounds like we're going to have a lot more major events coming our way. Because of how successful the draft was here, Drew.
Yeah, very excited about that, and was so excited about the draft coming here, and everything you hoped would happen, that the city would show out, it did. And you hope, of course, with that many people and people from all over the country, you think, there's going to be some problems. And you literally can count on one hand how many issues there were, and they were pretty minor. I mean, this is outstanding. I mean,
I didn't see one.
I would hope the next time I travel down south, and I say this from experience, when I bring up where I'm from, I don't hear, "Oh, y'all was burning cars in the '84 World Series." Don't want to hear that anymore, because that was about 40 years ago. Now, let's talk about the city that hosted the 2024 draft and how they pulled a record-breaking attendance record, 775,000 people plus. Pretty cool, man. It's good for the city, good for everybody. You got to meet Billy Sims too, Coach, didn't you?
Got to meet one of my heroes, Billy Sims. Got to meet him on Saturday. He wasn't too far from the staging area, and right down by entry 2. And it's just a marvelous experience. And I think there are so many people that could tell you the same. Any horror stories. There was nothing like that. Seen from this perspective. And, even on day 3, I was able to park down at Cass and Ford. I mean, I was right there. Oh, cool. So, I mean, it really, really was just awesome. And, glad we got to do it.
That's fantastic.
Cool. I think it'll come back again.
We hope so. Sooner than later. We certainly hope so. But let's talk about this draft class for the Lions. We certainly spent enough time analyzing the prospects, and folks, we got a whole playlist of them. There's all 11 position groups we did. It's good stuff. Really gives you some excellent in-depth feedback on each player. Whether you're a Lions fan or any other fan of the NFL, it's worth looking into. That's a playlist for the 2024 NFL Draft prospects. So take a look at that. Coach, let's start on that first round, man. Lions had pick 29. But then they trade up when Dallas is on the clock and they make a switch. They trade their 29th pick and their 73rd third round pick to Dallas for the number 24 pick and a 7th round pick next year. So they paid a bit of a price to get up here, but look who they get. Terrion Arnold. He was the number 2 cornerback on our board, Coach. He was number 1 on a lot of people's boards, but what'd you think of this pick?
Oh, and he could have been number 1 on ours. I mean, that was a very debatable thing. There were just a few effort plays that we saw from Wiggins that kept him above. And it's not that Terrion Arnold didn't show effort plays. There were just a couple of really, really impressive things that we just kept Wiggins where he was at. I mean, these guys were within 1 point in our ranking system. Absolutely thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. We've got a cornerback of this caliber coming in to the Lions. I mean, he is going to be for the future now. You know, whether it's day one, we have Carlton Davis, we've got Robertson, and we've got Mosley back. Obviously Brian Branch. We were talking a little bit before we got recording here. Maybe Branch sees a little more safety this year. Maybe he transitions that way. We shall see. But Terrion Arnold is the CB1 of the future. He's going to be the on-ball press man corner of the future. He's excellent at navigating into the line of scrimmage. Very, very comfortable in doing that. Sound tackler. He's an excellent man cover. Very good in zones. Going to have to get a little bit better at some of those kinds of transitions. But this is an elite player. And he told us on Thursday that you got yourself a star. And I believe it. I really firmly believe, his best days will be ahead past the 2024 season. He's going to share a lot of clock. Likely with Carlton Davis. And rightfully so. I mean, that this is something you want to be immersed in with great confidence as a defensive player in a shutdown corner. And I think we will see that very soon. Terrion Arnold is going to be a long-term Lion. Great fit, great fill, needed player, great answer by Brad Holmes in making this defense better.
Yeah, I mean, we debated. There were other directions the Lions could go in the first round, but cornerback, at least for me, was always near the top of the list. That just I like Davis, I like Robertson. They brought Vildor back for depth, they brought Mosley back for depth, and they still have Branch as that slot corner. But to your point, he's going to see some more time at safety. They needed more depth because let's face it, Davis won't be there next year more than likely. I don't believe Robertson will either, and I know Mosley won't be, and I know Vildor won't be. So to dismiss a cornerback in the first round was the same way that Aaron Donald was dismissed in his draft because, well, they had 2 guys under contract for a whole year each, Sue and Fairley. You kind of needed a guy like that. I look at it this way. Yeah, you didn't need him this year, but you certainly might contribute greatly. A year after you're going to need him. So this was a good pick. Now, they gave up that third round pick. They got that in the Hawkinson deal, I believe, from Minnesota. So, I mean, they gave up a little bit. But at the same time, when you look at it, Coach, you're saying, well, I, in essence, traded a third round pick for Terrion Arnold, which the Lions traded a third round pick for Davis. I'll take starting cornerbacks for third round picks all day long. Well, that's exactly what you would hope you'd get with the third round pick. So I at first was like, wow, it's a lot. But then when I saw Arnold's name on there, I never thought, Coach, that Terrion Arnold's name would be past 20. I think we mocked him at 20 to Pittsburgh.
We did.
And, Quinyon Mitchell, now in this draft, the first 13 picks of this draft were all offensive players, which in my mind benefited the Lions. It was heavy quarterback, which we knew was going to happen. It went heavy receiver, which it actually went even heavier than we thought, and even heavy left tackle, which we expected. But again, a little bit deeper, but positions the Lions already were pretty comfortable at. That's why guys like Arnold and Wiggins and them slid down. This, I think, was a great move. If I gave it a letter grade
for offensive players,
what was that?
The first 16 picks for offensive players.
Yeah. So, I mean, bottom line, it was a very, I think it's a wise investment. And I mean, at face value, I mean, you can't give it less. I mean, to me, for anyone to say it's less than a B plus, and I saw a couple, but nobody really bagged it. How can you? Terrion Arnold's a great prospect. You're going to tell me whoever the third round pick was at 73 is going to become a better player than Terrion Arnold, or could be a significant contributor. I don't know, but Terrion Arnold's is worth the risk in my mind. So nice pick there. Now we go to round 2, and lo and behold, this was a guy, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., who some folks, seeming in the local media, I saw it, mocked him in the first round to Detroit. And we had him number 6 on our board, Coach. And here we go at 61. The first question is, well, why would you draft 2 cornerbacks? So, Coach, maybe you can answer that for the fans.
Well, yes, he's a unique position fit, and if you really want the greatest in depth of that study and definition and explanation of the type of corner that Ennis Rakestraw Jr. is, I would refer you back to our cornerback episode, because we have him featured. He was our number 6 cornerback on the big board. So the Lions got the number 2 and number 6 corners on our big board. Yeah. They obviously know the latter direction of this position group, and some of the guys that we have acquired are likely not to be back. And these are 2 long-term starters. Now, why would you draft them back to back? Because they pair perfectly. They pair perfectly. Terrion Arnold will be the on-ball line of scrimmage navigating press corner, that's CB1. Typically in what you would see on formations, you would have him pressed up against the number 1 receiving threat, outside wide receiving threat. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. will be on the opposite side of the field of that. And that typically you're going to see a wide out that might be off the line of scrimmage, and it's going to require a different technique. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no better cornerback in this draft that playing that technique than Ennis Rakestraw Jr. In fact, he may be the best off corner prospect that we have seen in the NFL draft in quite some time. We have him now here, and he has a year to cultivate his talents and learn how to play this technique and be an off corner in the NFL. It's a perfect match. It's a perfect match. He has a significant injury, to his history. A few years back, he had torn his ACL. It's that's great work by in putting that out there, Drew. But this guy is a look-off wizard. A look-off wizard. He just cuts angles down, and then sticks his nose in on run plays and does all the little things. Long rumored to be a Lion target. Brad Holmes and company, Dan Campbell love this guy and love his attitude. Missouri's really, pumping out some high caliber prospects, not only in this draft, but in drafts yet to come. Some great program on the rise there. But man, is this a fit? And like just as you had alluded to earlier, Drew, we have long-term needs at this position group. And we need to make it solid. We certainly had 2 slots open at corner for the long term. Okay. And they are now filled.
Yeah, and then if folks are doubting, well, Brad Holmes, what are you thinking? Well, they were thinking the same thing in Philly. They did exactly the same thing in Philly. They got 2 cornerbacks.
They solved their long-term need too.
Yeah, and bottom line is Arnold and Rakestraw are going to start absolutely not in this year necessarily, but certainly in 2025 they're going to start, and going forward they're going to start. Now you've got Rakestraw, you've got Branch, you've got Arnold, you've got Melifonwu, you got Kirby Joseph. Now you've got a core secondary that's all going to be within their 2 to 4 year window of experience. It's a great situation. And I mean, the Lions at times back in our fandom in the early 90s and such, Coach, we had some secondaries there that were pretty solid.
Oh, yeah.
No question. But
it has to be.
This is they addressed the linebackers last year. They've really tried to address the D line in earnest, and they've done a great job of that. Now they've focused on the secondary. I love the pick. Now I don't know. I think it's gonna be a hell of a training camp battle to see who's starting on this team. I really do. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I think it's gonna be very interesting. These preseason games are gonna be must-see TV for Lions fans.
Amik Robertson. I mean, he's got a lot of clock. and he shut down a football game on his own. I mean, he's made those kind of plays in NFL football games, and we know Carlton Davis. I mean, he's heralded by some as one of the toughest cornerbacks physically in the league.
He's real good.
So I mean, that kind of experience. I mean, that's like the young guy, got got a great degree, got real good grades, had some really good internship experiences, but the guy that's been around the block in the industry, a dozen or so years, there's just a little seasoning on that individual that person has yet to acquire. And I think that's going to be the kind of the situation we see. I think these guys will be, it will not be baptism under fire unless there's an injury to one of the other corners, but they will be feathered in with significant roles, and they definitely are the few. It's just a great situation. We aren't going to have to pour this person out there and and them not be ready. That's not going to be a situation we have to be concerned with at all.
No, you're right.
This really kind of takes the bust risk out of the equation, really.
Yeah, I mean, right now as a Lions fan, I'm feeling real good about these first two picks, and you just explained it very well why it makes sense, and it makes a lot of sense. And Brad Holmes, he's going to say what he said, but of course he said these were our top two corners on our board, and I believe him because the top six guys were out. They're all very good players, all very good prospects. So, but we definitely liked Arnold, and we definitely liked Rakestraw Jr. So, welcome to Detroit, guys. Now, here's where it gets interesting, Coach. So Detroit trades up again. So, certainly the fans are digging this. They trade their third round pick next year to the Jets for this year's 126th pick, which is a fourth round pick. And they take an offensive tackle out of British Columbia, Canada, who very few national media pundits, or certainly any local media pundits, really covered. Giovanni Manu out of British Columbia, Canada. Coach, we after the fact, we saw a lot of video of his workouts, and he is a physical specimen. But your thoughts on this, getting up a third round pick to trade for a guy who, to this point, has never played a down of football in the United States?
Got to be front and center. Got to be front and center when this man was drafted, and we were right there when the governor made that call. And there was a pause. I mean, there were people weren't upset. They weren't, pounding their fists. They weren't, also, cheering, and running through the streets or anything either. I think there was some pause. There were some individuals that realized just how big and athletic they had heard. Because if there was a little bit of trail out there if you were following top 30 visits. And, there's this big player. There's a couple players out of Canada. There was, Quantas Stiggers, who was a defensive back that was drafted, in and around somewhere on day 3 as well. And Giovanni Manu. And, he's a Tongan player, a Tongan, immigrant, a Pacific Islander Canadian. They moved to Canada rather than with the Western United States, which has a large population that has migrated there as well, and that has also gotten involved in football. Giovanni Manu, Drew, is there's highlights. If you want to see him in YouTube, you can. You're not going to be overwhelmed. You're not going to be like, oh my goodness, this is the second coming to Tony Baselli, or I tell you, Sue, we can let we can let Taylor Decker walk. This is we got our guy. No. You're not going to be very, very impressed by what you see him do, just not because of how he's doing it. He does a good job of that. It's just who it's against. And that's no discredit, but guys, big time offensive linemen are tested by very big time edge defenders here in the United States. It's just a little bit different when it comes to that in the college football scene. Giovanni Manu has got a very, very little experience that way. The competition level is definitely a little bit lower with what he's faced. I have looked for it. I cannot find. He supposedly played basketball at this university as well. So let's just now transition the conversation that way. This is a guy that played football and basketball in college, and he's an offensive lineman. Okay, that's pretty impressive. 6'7", 352, absolute giant human being, on a sub 540. He runs a sub 540, just about a 35-inch vertical leap, 33 and a half inches. Talking about moving him in the guard, I think, guys, this is the long-term answer to Dan Skipper. I think that's kind of the type of player we're talking about here. He's a utility offensive lineman. Could he be the swing tackle? We don't need him to do that this year. We have that position, but we have that player. But he also is a depth. He could come in there and play offensive tackle. That's what he was at the University of British Columbia. Plan on moving him inside. So what we would like to do in combo with guys like Penne, in combo with guys like Taylor Decker, and be able to work with that, be able to support if Frank Ragnow is going to be around and here for the long term. This is the type of guy that could really help pin players off and help him in that regard and be kind of a combo block partner, a double partner with a Frank Ragnow. It'd be a real good one for him. That physical leverage. He's got the physical size and ability to just be able to take over things and take some pressure off of Ragnow's blocks. So he possesses some of these things. Real sharp kid. We didn't have a lot of data on him, and where I'm not gonna turn away from the camera here, Dave, and wipe tears out of my eyes with that. I was he's kind of one of the great unknown, but hey, this is what the draft is about. It's about finding these folks. I'm excited to see what we have in him. I think we have to see him in some preseason film just to see what we've got. I just have a feeling, and I'm not trying to be a naysayer here. I'm excited to see, but I think there's gonna be a little catching up to do here, Drew. With it's one thing to be able to catch an old, hen that's laying some eggs, and it's another one to be able to catch the young rooster that's running around the chicken coop. He's going to have to learn to catch up to some of the competition level. But I'm excited. I'm excited with what we see here.
So as a fan, thanks, Coach. And as a fan, if I didn't trust Brad Holmes the way I do and truly understand what he's done, I'd hate this pick. I'm just being straight up honest.
Oh.
To trade a 3rd round pick next year. Now, again, when I look back at it, they had an additional pick, so they took from they had a couple 3rd round picks last year, so they took one of those, and so that kind of lessened it for me a little bit. Like, okay, they had an extra pick, and they're a good team. Obviously, the Detroit Lions are a Super Bowl contender this year. They are. There's no question about that. But bottom line, that's a luxury teams that are contenders like that and that are built for the long haul. It's not like Detroit's got this 2-year window that if they don't hit it now, they're screwed. No, they're not. They're actually built to last. So any team that was in a position to make a pick like this would be the Detroit Lions. So in that respect, I trust Brad Holmes. Did they need to trade up to get him and give up a 3rd round pick? Well, I got to trust that there were 11 teams that had him in for visits. 10 of them weren't Detroit.
Yeah.
So obviously he knew he needed to move up. And then you start getting flashbacks of, the ghost of Lions past, right? And GM's past making moves and making ridiculous picks like in the 2nd round. Okay, this is a 4th round pick. This isn't a day 2 or day 1 reach here. This is a project, but wow. And I agree with you. People get all uptight when they were a MAC player. Okay, that's pretty good football. This guy didn't even play in the United States. And to your point, Coach, you can watch the video, but it's like he's playing one of the local high school teams here. I mean, it's not going to tell you much.
Lawrence Tech, Madonna, type, caliber. Maybe not even quite that. But I mean, and I'm not trying to be a football snob here. Hey, I mean, the nation of Canada is a wonderful place. By and large, their hockey still is just just more advanced than the United States. And then we have tons of hockey going on now.
Yeah.
And it has been for 30 years or more. All over the country. We're pumping out the best player in the NHL out of Phoenix, Arizona now, and Austin Matthews, which is an unheard of thing. But Canada, I mean, hey, if we beat them, that's special.
Yeah.
Football, hey, it's okay. We know that that's a little more advanced here. We created the game. Mm-hmm. It's really been our thing that it's major college in Canada does not compare to that of the United States. It's not even close. It's really maybe on the NAIA level. That said, they produce players. Canada produces players. Canadian universities produce players. So here's a Gio Montmanu being the next Dan Skipper, Drew. And yes, to your point, yeah, I mean, there's plenty for those that don't like this pick. I mean, I don't think you should be, chastised for that. There's reason to be kind of like, hey, that's pretty good draft capital we just spent here.
Yeah.
So I mean, I understand you, but I mean, let's see what we got. It's gonna probably 3 years out before we can really determine what we got with Gio Manu.
Yeah. So that being said, I mean, I can't give this pick a bad grade because and it's typical. If someone didn't know who the guy was or didn't scout them themselves, well, it must be a terrible pick. No, I don't buy that at all. And I do trust Brad Holmes and that whole organization now in talent evaluation. So right now I'd have to say, okay, this is a C. Okay. It is what it is.
What was your pick for Arnold, Drew?
For me personally, I have Arnold at an A-, and I got a B+ for Rakestraw.
Okay, so A-, B+, C so far.
Okay. Yeah, that's just my personal opinion. So now we move on to.
I think C that's the only way you can really go, because I mean, to say it's an A.
Yeah, no.
Nothing yet. Say it's B, probably a little unfair. Right in the middle there.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of neutral, and it's kind of maybe it's spineless on my part. I don't know.
Well, it's the only fair thing to do, because in everyone's fairness, I mean, this is a risk reward type scenario, and there is a real good chance there's a reward to it.
Mm-hmm.
If he's Anthony Munoz II, well, then Brad Holmes should just get his gold jacket right now.
Yeah, no doubt. I love Manu's physicality and his athletic ability. He's a specimen. I mean, he's got potential to be a good football player. There's no question about that. So that's why
the gentlemen in his room that he'll be around are just great. I mean, he will be mentored and very, very well.
Exactly. That's a great point, Coach. Well, it didn't take long for Brad Holmes to get active again, because they trade right back up the lines doing the 4th round. They traded picks 164 and a 4th round pick in 2025 to the Philadelphia Eagles, and they acquired the 132nd pick and the 210th pick in this draft. And the Lions used that pick to take Sione Vaki out of Utah, who we know is a safety, but he got introduced as a running back, Coach, and he played about 5 games last year for Utah as a running back. So that was an eyebrow raiser for us as well. But I know we actually talked about Vaki on our safety coverage, not in depth, but we did mention he was in our top 20. We had him at 18th on our board. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, in high school, he was a slot receiver, corner safety, and he was recruited as an athlete because he was a return man. And yes, there were schools out that way that were looking at him as an offensive player. Utah, is a phenomenal football program. Kyle Whittingham is an outstanding coach, and that is a phenomenal football program. Brought him in and wanted to work him in at safety. And, there's other ones. Cole Bishop is another Utah safety that was drafted on day 2. And very, very good football player. Yeah. Drafted early, I think, in the 2nd round, if I'm not mistaken. We saw him, on the screens when we were walking Woodward, get taken on day 2. Sione Vaki, so was a guy that shared some safety reps. They love him as a football player. He was a phenomenal special teams contributor in his career. with the Utes. But they also looked at him just his physicality, and they knew that he was really a premier offensive talent out of high school. I mean, there were D1 programs recruiting him as a slot receiver. And, they had some ideas, but, he had now grown physically. He kind of his body type had changed a little bit. He's a little thicker now. We have some issues here. Sione, we'd like you to run the football for us. Okay. And sure enough, he's got some great film on it. So much so that here late in the draft process, Sione Vaki, and he did do some things at the combine on both sides, and he did things on both sides at his pro day in Salt Lake City as well at the University of Utah. We're getting a Swiss Army knife here, Drew. We're getting a 50-50 guy now. I've seen 2 interviews, both in the draft process. This wasn't post, Lions pick. This is still before he was drafted. That he does prefer to play defense. He's really kind of grown into being a defensive player. He's just all growing up. He's more confident and comfortable playing defense. But is definitely interested in running. He likes running the football. It's not. He didn't say it's easy for him, but it's less mental for him. It's almost a relief to carry the football because he's getting it and going and trying to find daylight and square shoulders and go and keep the football secured without fumbling it and get what he can. And if it's 5, 6, 7 yards, done your job. Thanks, Sione. And hey, that's Lions football. Sione Vaki, and I don't want this because I like Craig Reynolds. He's a Kutztown State University graduate, which is I have a cousin that ran cross country there. And, I want him to keep going. And I love his block, and he's a part of the Lions fabric right now. I don't want him replaced. Sione Vaki's running style is very similar to that of Craig Reynolds if he goes to that side. But I think Craig Reynolds is lucky here, Drew. We have such little depth at safety. I think he's just going to get this opportunity. But we have a Swiss Army knife type player here. Oh, we like to play games on special teams with, Jalen Reeves-Maben, who's kind of a Swiss Army knife type player too, that played quarterback in high school, that we know his cousin is a pretty doggone good outfielder and played some major league ball, that he can do some different things. He can throw a ball. He can catch a ball, do all sorts of things. Well, what does he do? He's an absolute – he keeps people on their heels or on their toes, whatever you want to call it, when our punt team rolls out there, because we don't know what he's going to do. If he's going to grab it and run, he's going to get it and throw it. I mean, what's he going to do? Is he just going to block and stay? You now have another player like that, and Sione Vaki. You've got a guy that if we did have some running back depth issues, we aren't having to pay somebody off of the street. We have somebody on the roster to do it. And I think, Drew, we've got a guy that is going to be kind of in the repertoire, in the stable, of safeties. I don't know who to compare him to yet, other than he's our Swiss Army knife.
Well, I get Malcolm Rodriguez flashbacks, which is a good thing, because he's a sixth round pick from 2 years ago, linebacker, wasn't drafted and announced as a punter or anything like that, but ultimately ended up playing fullback last year and lost his starting job at linebacker, not because he didn't play well, just because they drafted a guy named Jack Campbell, and then Derek Barnes found another level, and then Anzalone there, and they only play 2 at a time. Yeah. They're mostly in nickel or dime coverage. So that's
still a fine linebacker. He's still a fine player.
But
big play against the Niners.
But I firmly expect Vaki to make a significant special teams impact day one. That has to happen because, again, you gave up more draft capital, and let's be honest. Now we're talking about a D1 guy. Utah's a very good former Pac-12 program now, but
Big 12 program now.
Yeah, Big 12 now. So when I hear Swiss Army, if I like it, but that also tells me probably not starting, probably not getting a lot of reps on defense or offense. So better contribute on special teams. So I said B-, because I like his athletic profile, and I don't think I know his attitude, and his can do, willing to do whatever it takes to win attitude fits in very nicely with Coach Campbell's scheme and what Brad Holmes is trying to build here. So his attitude and his effort definitely make him a great Detroit Lion. But he's a very good athlete. He's a very good athlete, so he's gonna help immediately, especially on special teams. But we'll see. You're right. I don't know where he might fit in. He may end up being a hell of a safety. Who knows? Not sure. But overall, you like the pick overall though, Coach?
I do. He get this. You get a guy at that draft slot, and yeah, I mean, obviously they have some ideas for him. I just think that they valued him and his the diverse repertoire of skills that he brings to the table in regards to the different special teams that he can play, being a safety, being a former running back, a former slot receiver, all these different kinds of things. But more than all, I mean, they really like the ability for him to be able. They value what he can be as a safety, because that is a position. We have a spot there. We have a spot to fill, 53-man roster spot to fill.
Yeah.
Not just some depth piece. So I mean, you get a lot of football player with this draft slot.
Yeah, and for that alone, I mean, it's definitely in my mind worth at least a B-. But only because we just don't know where he's going to play exactly.
We had him 18th on our big board. He was pinned down a little bit. But I mean, I saw different algorithms with him. There were ones that were similar, like, okay, he's definitely he's a day 3 pick, and he was a day 3 pick. But I'd seen him range from 3rd round to 5th, 6th round. So I mean, there are a lot of people impressed, and he's a very impressive interview. Very conscientious interviewer. Definitely loves his football. Well-spoken, soft-spoken guy, grounded sounding guy. So, I mean, hey, Sione Vaki is definitely going to be a welcome fit here. This was somebody that we knew going into the draft process. When we saw that name get selected, we knew we were getting something.
Yeah, absolutely. So welcome to Detroit, Sione Vaki. Looking forward to seeing you in Allen Park very soon. Now, Coach, the Lions didn't have a 5th round pick, so they get to the 6th round, and lo and behold, they trade up again. This time with the Houston Texans, they trade their number 205 and 249 picks to Houston for the 189 pick, and they get Mekhi Wingo, defensive tackle out of LSU, and we like him a lot. And I tell you what, the first 2 picks I really liked. I was surprised they went corner both picks, but I loved it. Again, the last 2 with Manu and Vaki, I was like, okay, let's see what we got. These last 2 picks really caught my attention because these are guys we really liked and they slipped for some reason. But Mekhi Wingo is a Detroit Lion, Coach. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, I think the 2 featured reasons, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a minute, are his size and then that knee injury that he kind of had to battle. But this is lightning in a bottle. I mean, this is an explosive football player. He was 2nd team All SEC a couple of years ago. I mean, this is a real as a young player. So I mean, this is a guy that brings a lot of electricity in his repertoire. He's a mover. He's twitchy and very, very explosive moving skills. He can go out there at 6 foot, 285, 290 pounds. He can go out there and rush off the edge. He can play the edge. He can arc the edge and probably be supportive, to an Aiden Hutchinson. He's going to be able to do this. He's not an every down player. I don't know if he'll ever be that at that size, but there will be elements that he brings to the table. And this is where they can maximize a guy like Mekhi Wingo and his explosive quickness, we know how compact and kind of bulldog build he is, but if we can maximize his juice, maximize his twitch, he will give us Aaron Donald type reps. Now that doesn't mean he's Aaron Donald. I'm not going to tell you that. We wouldn't have drafted him at 189. We would have had to have done that much, much, much earlier. Yeah. But if there even is such a thing, because Aaron Donald may be the finest defensive tackle we've ever seen. Barry Sanders and he are the only ones that ever make the Pro Bowl every one of their every one of their seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So Mekhi, I'd love to give you that kind of title, but that's going to have to be earned, my friend.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about the pass rushing. We need to become a better pass rushing team, right, Drew?
Yeah,
He needs
absolutely.
and this is a great addition to that. Exactly where he fits. I think he's going to be in and out, in and out. He's going to, and they're going to want him to be a presence in the backfield against on passing downs. This is what I am thinking. His initial role is going to be. Got to keep him healthy. He's not, a farmer. Who's my big fella? Farmer Jones. He's not
Neither
Benito
Jones, yeah.
Jones. He's not our guy that we ended up having to move on from midway through the year from Alabama last year, who made some plays for us. The other big defensive tackle. They're not big nose guard kind of pluggers that way. This is kind of an accent and a footnote to an Aleem McNeil type player. So kind of expect that with what you see, and a guy that's really going to try to be a pass rushing menace.
Yeah, you add Wingo. You already have James Houston, who's kind of got that same MO, a little different body type, different.
He's more of an outside linebacker edge type, but yeah, you're right. I mean, he's more of an edge bender. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So it makes you dynamic. I mean, they certainly. Let's face it, the Lions already have you got Hutchinson, McNeil, and Reeder. And then the other end, you've got Davenport. You've also got Kaminsky on the squad still. You've got Broderick Martin, young Broderick Martin. It'd be interesting to see what he does here in year two. You still got Onwuzurike. Now you add Wingo, Pascal, Josh Pascal. Yeah, that's a nice player too. A little bigger than Wingo in terms of height, but Wingo's definitely got the mass. I mean, that 285. That's a nice weight. He's only 6 foot, but that's where the Donald comparisons come in. No, it's not far-fetched if you put him situationally in the right spot that he can't make very impactful plays and get very impactful reps. He's just not going to be that every down guy, like you said. But I like the pick. I love the trade up to get. I think they get great value here. I gave this pick an A. I love this pick. I think that fantastic value there, Coach.
He the guy that his teammate, his tag team partner Mason Smith, who we did feature, and man, I mean, physical specimen. He's a big giant, type of a defensive tackle prospect. This guy's way more active. Mekhi Wingo is way more active. So yeah, very exciting.
And then we move on again and again. The Lions, well, they had traded up previously with the Manu pick. They acquired this pick at 210, and this shocked me. Number one, it shocked me. He fell as far. Christian Mahogany, the guard out of BC, but we had him number 8 on our board for offensive guards, interior linemen. We was a dark horse for us. We liked him a lot. Coach, first. Let's talk about why you think he slipped.
It's a knee injury. He missed the entire 2022 season to an injury, and he's not quite the same. There's a little bit of bend that people I believe may think there's a hindrance in his mobility, and that's where I'm guessing it is. Now he really anchored in and was one of the finest right guards in the ACC the last couple of seasons. The 23 and 24 seasons, Christian Mahogany he might be the dominant right guard in the ACC. And that's where his juice came from. And, he did very, very well there. He's 2-time first team all ACC guard. And, we know that this is, the Lions are going to be what they are because of their offensive line, just like the Baltimore Ravens are going to be what they are because of their offensive line. The San Francisco 49ers, the Kansas City Chiefs, soon the Los Angeles Chargers, because they're going to build through their offensive line. The Dallas Cowboys, the list goes on of winning teams that have great offensive lines. And we have to fortify this. And we tried to make that clear. You did a great job of that all throughout our different positional coverages this past season and in past years. We'll continue to do that. If you ever take us in when we go through the 2025 prospects, you'll hear us talk about how we need to stay out in front with our offensive line. And it's really kind of an investment type thing, fix the roof when the sun is shining type prospect with a Christian Mahogany pick here, Drew. We've had guys like Stenberg. He's gonna be the new Logan Stenberg type pick. The new Terrell Crosby type guy who's going to be kind of a pivot player. In regards to where he starts and that kind of thing. Well, I mean, he's not going to start, okay, this year. Could he be a starter when someone's injured? And we have some concerns. If Glasgow's got to move in because Frank needs some time, we got our guy. We got our guy. This player, I think, would start ahead of Gio Manu right now at a guard spot. He's more ready. He has played against a much, much bigger brand of football. So Christian Mahogany is a player. If you're not very familiar with Lions fans, take a look at our interior offensive line, stuff. We featured him. He was our number 8 guard. We talked about him as a dark horse. Well, he's a Detroit Lion now. He's an outstanding run blocker, and he's got that. He's the type of player the Lions are looking for.
And I gave this pick an A- only because of the injury, and there was a reason he slipped. And I kind of assumed that would be the case, but I love the pick. I didn't expect Christian Mahogany to be there in round 6 at all. Quite frankly, I mean,
flip Manu and Mahogany, and I think I could have believed that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and but I love the pick. Now you've got depth. You've got Mahogany. Now you've got Iosika. You've got Sorsdahl. You've got
Sorsdahl. Good call.
So there's some depth now. Young depth, but a couple of those guys started a few games last year, so they got a little bit of a taste.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I think our depth's typically gonna be that way. As guys move on and that kind of thing. The revolving door is going to hopefully be that when we need to move on from a Taylor Decker, when we need to move on from a Graham Glasgow, when it's all over, when a Frank Ragnow's, whatever the case may be, that we have these players requisitely available to be able to insert, and then we replace them. So kind of this almost college mentality with the offensive line, cultivating it and moving it forward. It's what it looks like to me, at least, Drew.
No, you're right. And coach, you brought up fix the roof while the sun's shine. And it seemed like at least this year, Detroit, Philly, and a couple other teams were ahead of the curve a bit because the majority of teams were chasing after their quarterback or their left tackle or their number 1 receiver. All those boxes are checked in Detroit and Philly and Frisco. Let's look for other pieces. And it was a great situation. If they can consistently stay ahead of the curve like that, that's the Patriot way. Let's face it. I mean, of course, you need Tom Brady under center. That helps a lot. But the Patriot way in terms of how you build the team, that's how it's done. And that's why we, as Lions fans, we would sit back from the outside and be like, why aren't they re-signing this guy? He's only 29. Because they drafted his replacement 2 years ago, and you didn't know about it. But he's pretty damn good and he's ready. And by the way, he's going to cost 50% less. And now we can go address another position. So that's the Patriot way. And that's what Brad Holmes is doing in Detroit with Spielman and Campbell and the whole gang. I mean, they're doing a great job. So overall, I like the draft personally. And I want to hear your thoughts too before we close out on overall. But overall, I do like the draft. They took a couple of gambles. But they also made some very, very sound decisions that you can't dispute at all with Arnold and Rakestraw. And then to get Wingo and to get and to get Mahogany late in the draft in the 6th round, man, I can't argue with that at all. And it's okay when you're coming off a season like they had and they're poised to have perhaps an even better season this year. That's when you can do things like that. But your thoughts, Coach, overall on this one?
Drew, I mean, I mirror your sentiments almost like for the word. I mean, it was once again fulfilling to me. I mean, obviously the proof's in the pudding. They got to be able to play, and unless we see Okuda like type stuff out of these guys, or they're injured immediately, or whatever the case may be, I'm expecting Giovanni Manu to have some bumps in the road. He is not going to look like a guy that can really give us a ton right now. But again, Christian Mahogany probably would, if we need one of these rookies to step up, it's going to be him. It'll be because We have that luxury with that spot. These for almost everybody on everybody's draft board. Very few of these guys are just going to jump in there and be what maybe Brian Branch was, be what Jahmyr Gibbs was, be what Jack Campbell was as a rookie. We don't need that anymore. We don't need that anymore. And will the Lions be good and have a rookie be a major contributor and a starter in the future? Oh, yeah. I mean, that's going to happen again. But, we are configured differently now. And, outside of, Arnold and Rakestraw probably getting, a little more reps than maybe the other four players that were drafted, last weekend. We've got some incubation time that we can work with these guys on. So I'm very, very happy with our selections. I'm very, very happy with the selections. We didn't need to address running back this year. Didn't need to address quarterback this year. Didn't need to address tight end this year. Didn't need to address linebacker this year. Wide receiver is a position that is there a de facto spot out there still that could be? Yes, there is. Was Josh Reynolds replaced? Not by an addition of a player yet. We did give significant money to Isaiah Williams as an undrafted free agent from the University of Illinois. Now, that's something that if we wanted to do a separate episode down the road, we could talk about the UDFAs a little bit. Because we got some nice players and some players that we actually that were some of them we didn't feature, but they were on our big board. Mm-hmm. And so there's some names that we definitely profiled a little bit. So I mean, there's some other players that could work themselves onto the Detroit Lions that are undrafted free agents as well. But outside of that, I mean, every box they needed to check was checked. They've got their future bookend corners. They have invested in the offensive line and gotten some depth and some pieces for the future. They've gotten themselves a guy that's a be-all, end-all type player in Sione Vaki. And they've got a real good bursty piece of a defensive lineman in Mekhi Wingo. So, I mean, I think it's a draft well fulfilled by the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, it's so hard to follow up last year's results. I mean, let's face it, last year and a maligned draft, mind you, but what a draft it was.
We pegged all, and it was day one, day two. We were doing this early in the draft. So I mean, if you were in, and that's another observation we have. Okay, we had 6 picks this year. We wound up with 6 picks. Yeah. 5 of those 6 selections, 5 of them, Brad Holmes made a move on.
Yeah.
So we trade. He's if you want to try to guess who the Lions are going to pick in the draft in the future, you might get the player right, but I bet you aren't going to get the slot right because I think he's going to make moves to get some of these guys.
That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had Laporta to Detroit in round 3 last year. Well, he went early round 2, but we got the player.
It was our third pick, but it was in the second round. Yeah,
exactly. So it works out. Just a hell of a draft to follow up on. But again, this team's different, and because of that draft success, that's what made this draft to this year possible. Because a lot of the positions you mentioned were addressed last year, which didn't have to be this year. And if they can keep that cyclical thing going, because they just gave St. Brown and Sewell, they're locked in now. That's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. So
that means we will have to draft a receiver down the road because we're not going to be able to afford a couple of these guys.
Yep. And before we hit the panic button, as we see every single year, there is a laundry list of high-profile stud receivers every year. I'm not saying they all pan out, but that's a position group that you probably don't ever have to reach for unless there's just that Randy Moss type guy you've got to have. They've got St. Brown. He's your number one. Jamison Williams is still
He'll be here for a while yet. For a couple more years at least.
Oh, he just got such a high ceiling. I mean, let's see what he does. This is going to be his first full year.
Yeah.
So this is kind of neat. But yeah, Peoples-Jones slides in. Khalif Raymond comes back. So they've got a core group of receivers there, and they've got Green and Kennedy and Williams, as you mentioned, as guys that are going to compete for the 5th and 6th spots. Maurice Alexander's another one. So there's guys there. But yeah, the core is going to be St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Peoples-Jones, and then you've got Khalif Raymond as your top 4. That's pretty good. And considering you have a Sam Laporte at tight end too, you're in good shape.
Yeah, and Brock Wright's coming back, who's an outstanding. I mean, he's every bit. He's not a tight end 2. He's a tight end 1B.
And don't forget, Jahmyr Gibbs is pretty good catching the football out of the backfield too. There's a lot of weapons.
100%.
A lot. So this is exciting. Great draft, Coach. Glad you got to see it firsthand. That was awesome, and just great time, great memories, right? And
yeah.
We will continue that as Lions fans this year, and then and certainly look for future episodes. We're certainly going to preview the team prior to training camp, and any other big things that come up. We'll certainly be talking about that at the Sports Peninsula podcast. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Give us your thoughts. Do you agree with our comments, our grades? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. We'll be happy to hear you out, and we may rebuttal. We may debate, but that's okay. It's good stuff. So for Coach Andy Shield, the Marine City Mariners, my name is Drew. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.